February 21, 1994, Arlington, Virginia. Snow drifts across a quiet suburban street as a gray Jaguar eases out of a driveway. "Target in motion," whispers a voice over the radio. Two SUVs surge forward. Sirens explode. "FBI, step out of the vehicle!" The driver freezes. A bespectacled man in his early 50s, calm but cornered. Agents move fast, weapons drawn. His wife is pulled from the house. Neighbors peek from behind curtains, watching history unfold. The man in cuffs is Aldrich Ames, a veteran CIA officer. In his briefcase lie coded notes and lists of names, Americans and Russians who trusted him with their lives. It's the end of a 9-year deception that crippled U.S. intelligence from the inside. But how did one ordinary man manage to blind the most powerful spy agency in the world? Aldrich Ames was born in 1941 in River Falls, Wisconsin, the son of a CIA officer. He grew up surrounded by stories of the Cold War, of double lives and silent wars waged in hotel rooms and alleys. He wanted to belong to that hidden world. In 1962, he joined the CIA himself, first as a clerk, then as an operations officer. He was bright but undisciplined. Heavy drinking, late mornings, and a sloppy work record shadowed him throughout his career. But he had a gift: understanding people, reading motives, finding weakness. For 2 decades, Ames drifted through the CIA's Soviet division. His career was mediocre but stable. Then came Mexico City, 1983. There he met Maria del Rosario Casas Dupuy, a Colombian diplomat. Ambitious, elegant, expensive. He fell hard. His finances collapsed. Divorce followed. Debts piled high. By 1985, Ames was desperate, broke, divorced, and trying to impress a new wife. That April, he walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. and offered a trade: the names of CIA assets inside the USSR in exchange for $50,000 in cash. He wasn't coerced. He wasn't ideological. He was simply tired of losing. The KGB accepted. Within weeks, their American mole delivered his first list. Every major Soviet official secretly working for the United States. The executions began almost immediately, and Aldrich Ames, sitting safely at Langley, watched it happen. After that first meeting in 1985, Aldrich Ames became the KGB's most valuable asset. He didn't just hand over files, he dismantled the CIA's operations from within. Inside Langley, Ames worked in the Soviet East European Division, the unit responsible for identifying and stopping foreign moles. It was the perfect cover. He had access to top-secret lists of U.S. informants working inside the USSR, and he sold every one of them. Within a year, Moscow's prisons filled with men and women who trusted America. Some were executed, others vanished into gulags. Among them were Sergei Motorin, Valery Martinov, and Dmitry Polyakov, a general who'd risked his life to feed the CIA critical intelligence for 2 decades. All of them were betrayed by the man meant to protect them. Ames's reward came quickly: $20,000 in envelopes, then $100,000, then more. By 1989, he'd received over $2 million, one of the largest payoffs ever given to an American spy. And he flaunted it. A $540,000 house in Arlington, paid in cash, a new Jaguar, tailored suits, vacations in the Caribbean. When colleagues asked how he could afford it, Ames shrugged and blamed his wife's wealthy family. No one questioned him. He was one of their own, and that was his greatest weapon. He even joined the internal mole hunt, reviewing files and analyzing leaks, the arsonist sent to find his own fire. But the CIA's losses kept growing. Dozens of operations in Eastern Europe collapsed. Entire intelligence networks were erased. Still, no one looked at Ames. He knew exactly how they investigated because he'd helped design the system. And as he passed each new folder of names to the KGB, his confidence deepened. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was winning. When Ames was finally arrested in 1994, the CIA was forced to face the scale of the damage. 10 agents were confirmed executed. Over 100 operations compromised. A generation of intelligence work gone. Every agent lost was a person who believed they were helping freedom win the Cold War. Instead, they'd been fed to the enemy. And for 9 years, the traitor had sat right beside them, drinking coffee, filing reports, shaking hands. The agency's pride crumbled. Investigators called it institutional blindness. How could a mid-level analyst with a $70,000 salary and a house worth $500,000 go unchecked? The truth hurt. They hadn't seen him because they hadn't wanted to. Ames was the kind of insider the CIA believed didn't exist, a traitor without ideology. When the FBI finally confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just sighed and said quietly, "Yeah, it's me." That was it. No defiance, no breakdown, just calm acceptance. His wife, Rosario, was arrested too. To protect her, Ames pleaded guilty to espionage. April 1994, he was sentenced to life without parole. Rosario received 5 years. In court, Ames said, "I betrayed my country, and I deserve my punishment." But the damage couldn't be undone, because this wasn't just about secrets. It was about trust, and that had died long before his arrest. Inside the CIA, the fallout was seismic. Entire divisions were reorganized, dozens of officers reassigned. New rules flooded in: stricter financial monitoring, random polygraph tests, invasive background checks. The agency began watching its own people more than its enemies. Langley learned a brutal truth. The greatest threat to national security doesn't always come from Moscow or Beijing. Sometimes it sits across from you at the cafeteria, wearing the same badge. In Moscow, though, Ames was celebrated. The KGB called his information the single most valuable intelligence haul in the history of Soviet espionage. Even after the USSR collapsed, his leaks lived on. The FSB inherited the networks and methods he exposed. Ames had given them more than secrets. He'd given them endurance. The man America called a traitor was, to Moscow, a savior. The day after Ames's arrest, the CIA's headquarters felt like a funeral. Officers whispered in hallways. Desks sat empty. The word betrayal echoed in every conversation. Because Aldrich Ames hadn't just sold secrets, he had sold the illusion of safety. For decades, the CIA believed its greatest threats came from outside its walls. Now they knew the truth. The enemy could sit behind their own desk. In the months that followed, the CIA turned inward. Agents who once specialized in catching Soviet spies now investigated their own co-workers. Financial audits, polygraphs, surprise security reviews. Trust became a risk factor. Director James Woolsey launched internal reforms. He called Ames's betrayal a tragedy born of arrogance and neglect. He was right. The agency had missed the obvious. A man living far beyond his means, whose job gave him access to everything, and who had quietly destroyed it all. Langley rebuilt, but not without scars. The openness that once defined its culture was replaced by suspicion. For years, CIA officers looked at each other and wondered, could there be another Ames? Why did he do it? Money, pride, resentment. Ames never pretended otherwise. He wasn't ideological. He wasn't coerced. He was a man who felt invisible, undervalued, unappreciated, and eager to prove how much power he still held. He once said, "It wasn't about the Soviets winning, it was about me not losing." That mindset, wounded pride dressed as practicality, made him one of the most dangerous spies in history. Because he wasn't acting for a cause, he was acting for himself. And that kind of betrayal is almost impossible to predict. In Russia, Ames's name still carries weight. Former KGB officers have called him our most productive American source. His information reshaped how the KGB and later the FSB understood U.S. intelligence operations. He didn't just give them files. He gave them a map of the CIA's structure, the psychology of its people, and the flaws in its system. Even after the fall of the Soviet Union, the legacy of his leaks endured. The new Russia's intelligence service was built, in part, on what he provided. The Cold War may have ended, but Ames ensured its shadows remained. Today, Aldrich Ames is serving life without parole at FCI Terre Haute, Indiana. He's in his 80s now, quiet, reclusive. He reads, he writes, he rarely talks about the past. When journalists ask if he regrets it, his answers change with time. Sometimes he calls it a lapse of integrity. Other times, he shrugs and says, "I do things differently, but what's done is done." He sounds less like a man haunted by guilt and more like one studying his own reflection, curious about how long it took others to see through the mask. Because deep down, that was his true victory. Not the money, not the secrets, but the fact that he fooled everyone for 9 years. Inside the CIA, Ames's ghost never left. His story became required reading for new recruits, a warning that betrayal doesn't always wear an enemy's face. Every polygraph, every financial review, every background check traces back to him. He changed how the agency sees loyalty itself. Because in the end, Aldrich Ames didn't just cripple the CIA. He changed it, forcing it to become colder, harder, and far more suspicious than before. That's the true cost of treason. Not just the secrets lost, but the trust that never comes back. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe for more real stories from the digital world. Don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss what's next.